Hi everyone, I'm Amelia. Today I want to tell you the story of an empire that once shaped everyday American life. Long before Amazon, before online shopping, there was Sears. For decades, millions of American families bought almost everything from this company, from refrigerators, to family clothes, to the iconic Craftsman tools sitting in garages across the country. At its peak, Sears wasn't just a store, it was the American dream. But then, the internet arrived. America changed, and one of the most powerful retail empires in history slowly began to disappear. And honestly, if you grew up in America, there's a good chance Sears was once part of your life too. So before we begin, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel, because stories like this are more than business stories. They're stories about how the world changes, and how entire generations change with it. This is the rise and fall of the Sears empire.
Walk through almost any town today, and you'll find them. The quiet, empty corridors of dead shopping malls. In millions of suburban garages, the bright red metal of a Craftsman toolbox used to be a fixture. Today, those inherited tools sit mostly untouched, a quiet relic of an older economy. It is easy to look at this landscape and point the finger at the usual suspects. We assume Walmart's aggressive pricing and Amazon's hyper-efficient internet delivery systems slowly choked out the brick-and-mortar giants. But there is a glaring irony in that explanation. The retailer that lost everything to the e-commerce boom is the exact same company that originally invented the concept of delivering absolutely everything straight to your door. In the 1880s, the United States was vast and largely rural. If you didn't live near a major city, accessing basic consumer goods meant a long, difficult trip to a poorly stocked general store. The rapidly expanding rail network was mostly moving industrial freight, not household items. Richard Sears, a train station agent, saw a massive bottleneck. He partnered with Alva Roebuck to bypass the local stores entirely, offering a radical proposition. People could select what they needed from home, send a letter, and have the goods shipped directly to them. The physical manifestation of this idea was the Sears catalog. Americans called it the Consumer Bible. Its inventory covered every aspect of domestic life. A family could order clothing, sewing machines, pianos, and even the lumber and blueprints to construct an entire house. By building a massive network of mail-order fulfillment centers, Sears solved the geography problem. They controlled the flow of goods across the country, securing a level of nationwide reliance that mirrors the grip modern tech giants hold over logistics today. By the 1920s, the country was changing. Ford's assembly line made automobiles accessible, pulling millions of people out of rural isolation and into sprawling, newly built suburbs. To capture these mobile, middle-class consumers, Sears moved off the printed page and began pouring capital into massive, glass-fronted retail stores. They positioned these buildings right in the middle of these growing neighborhoods. They also needed products that appealed directly to these new suburban homeowners. In 1927, they introduced a proprietary line of hardware called Craftsman. The brand quickly grew beyond a collection of wrenches and lawnmowers. Sears marketed Craftsman around the emerging culture of weekend garage projects and self-reliance, anchoring the tools to the identity of the capable, do-it-yourself American father. Sears had evolved. They were no longer a catalog you flipped through when you needed a specific item. Their physical locations and lifestyle brands had become the weekend destination for the American family. This chart tracks the company's sheer scale from the 1950s into the 1970s, showing a massive, continuous upward trend in both revenue and physical footprint. By this point, they operated thousands of locations. The capital generated by this expansion paid for the construction of the Sears Tower in Chicago. At the time of its completion, it was the tallest building on Earth, a steel and glass monument to their total control over the retail market. Inside those stores, Craftsman tools backed up the corporate image with concrete utility. The tools were heavily forged, rigorously tested, and famously sold with a strict lifetime warranty. If a wrench ever broke, you could walk into any store and get a new one, no questions asked. For the millions of people who spent their weekends changing their own oil or framing out a new deck, owning a set of these tools was a point of deep, working-class pride. This map illustrates the aggressive expansion of a new competitor in the 1980s. Walmart built an advanced distribution network to lower prices. As big-box locations saturated the map, this chart shows the effect.
These hyper-efficient supply chains forced a steady decline in Sears' customer base. The pressure compounded as specialized warehouse-style retailers arrived. The Home Depot offered an overwhelming depth of inventory specifically tailored for hardware and construction, pulling the lucrative DIY market directly out of Craftsman hands. Instead of modernizing their supply chain to fight back, corporate leadership became distracted. They diverted immense capital into unrelated financial ventures, including real estate, insurance, and the Discover credit card, allowing their actual stores to age and decay. And while management focused on credit portfolios, early computer networks were quietly laying the foundation for a digital marketplace that would render physical catalogs entirely obsolete. Prioritizing financial engineering over customer experience, the Chicago executives forgot the core mechanical function of retail, leaving the company completely blind to the internet. Then, the 1990s arrived. The internet began to digitize the remote shopping model Sears had spent a century perfecting, with a new startup named Amazon leading the charge. While e-commerce accelerated, Sears stumbled. Their early website was slow and difficult to navigate. The leadership failed to recognize how online buying would soon dictate the future of retail. As consumers shifted their spending to a digital cart, foot traffic began to slowly drain from America's suburban shopping malls. This decline in physical shoppers left their flagship tool brand, Craftsman, stranded. Without the mall crowds, the brand was isolated against aggressive competitors like DeWalt, Milwaukee, and Makita. Younger buyers wanted convenience and wider selections, and they found it at big-box competitors. The fierce brand loyalty their parents had for Sears simply didn't transfer to the next generation. The original pioneer of remote shopping had become hopelessly trapped inside millions of square feet of expensive, aging real estate. In 2005, a hedge fund manager named Eddie Lampert bought Sears and Kmart. His strategy was to ruthlessly cut costs, hoping to turn the retail giant into a profitable holding company. This flowchart illustrates the mechanics of asset stripping. Instead of investing in selling products, leadership extracted funds from store maintenance to generate cash for financial holdings. The physical consequences were immediate. Staffing was slashed, maintenance deferred, and the shopping experience deteriorated. Massive department stores that once buzzed with activity were reduced to dimly lit corners with empty shelves. Treating a retail operation purely as a financial mine to be excavated without nurturing the customer experience only accelerated its death. Between 2015 and 2018, revenue collapsed. The company lost billions of dollars and shuttered hundreds of locations in rapid succession. The breaking point came in 2017. Desperate for fast cash, leadership was forced to sell off the Craftsman brand to Stanley Black & Decker. By offloading its most trusted asset, the retailer was discarding its most recognizable connection to the American household, just to buy a few more months of survival. When Sears Holdings finally filed for bankruptcy in 2018, it proved a harsh reality. A century of historical reputation offers no protection if a company refuses to evolve. Yet, while the real estate empire turned into a graveyard, Craftsman survived. Stanley Black & Decker immediately set out to revive the neglected tool brand. They pulled Craftsman from dying malls and placed it where modern consumers were already shopping: Lowe's, Ace Hardware, and Amazon. However, the identity of the brand has shifted. It is no longer the exclusive, defining anchor of the American garage. Now it is one of many competitors fighting for shelf space in a crowded global market. A beloved product can outlive the collapse of its creator, provided it escapes the failing infrastructure in time. Beyond the balance sheets, the collapse of Sears left a visible void in the American suburbs. For decades, these stores were the setting for childhood memories and family weekend trips. Today, structures that once anchored local tax bases and social life are silent. These massive buildings now sit as eerie, empty spaces in the middle of their communities. The physical decay of these malls carries a quiet melancholy. It reflects the disappearance of a shared shopping culture that once tied middle-class neighborhoods together. When the doors closed for good, these towns lost more than a store. They lost a central gathering place that had been part of their local architecture for decades. Sears ultimately failed because its leadership moved too slowly to adapt to a digital market, eventually severing the company's connection with the customer. This is the Sears Tower. While it remains a landmark, the company's real history survives in its logistics. The sorting centers and delivery schedules Sears mastered for rural catalogs provided the operational foundation that companies like Amazon eventually scaled to dominate the world. And on a smaller scale, the physical legacy of Craftsman endures. Millions of those tools still sit in toolboxes and garages across the country, outlasting the department stores where they were first purchased. The shift from catalogs to malls and then to servers shows how quickly a physical advantage can become a liability when consumer habits change. As we browse digital inventories today, we are witnessing the same drive for convenience that built the first Sears catalog and eventually emptied its stores. Which current retail giant is unknowingly building its own empty mall?